Guys, it has been a day. Time for a Barge root beer. Oh, started out real early this morning. Had to take the wife to work, and then it was go get 2 loads of wood to bring home, chop, split, and get in the house and stacked up for this coming Arctic blast. Good evening, Brian. So that was double what I normally load up for a weekend. Well, I did it so it's 2 weeks worth of supplies now in the house. Plus, we're not picking up the chickens today. That's going to be tomorrow because there's 40 pounds of meat to process. Oh boy, Gray Wolf, you're not late. I just started a minute ago, so you're squeaking right in. Wow, Brian, -24. Yep, I hear you. David, good evening. Excuse me. Something up under my plate, and it's going to make life difficult. But just go all day. Good evening, Bear. Just got in. The wife, I'd already cooked supper. Run in, wolf down supper, and then she's, "Are we gonna do a fire?" God, I love her. Why, yes, my love, I will lay a fire before I go do my live. So I had to lay a fire in a hurry, and get it all going. And then, she's sitting here with the cat in her lap, finishing up the bowl of spaghetti for supper. And then I had to run do dishes right quick and squeak out here. So this is the first break I've caught at 7 a.m. Whew. No, Gray Wolf, you did not miss it by 50 minutes. It's just been going about 2 minutes. So you're 2 minutes and 3 seconds. So you're getting in on the ground. Good evening, Bear. How you doing, brother? 2020, good evening. Benton, good evening. Gunsmith 4570, hello. Diane Roberts, how you doing? James Singer, good evening. Southpaw, good evening. Yep, got to keep the fire going. Hugh, hello. We've got weather coming, and a lot of you are already getting some of it right now. When we have these El Ninos and we get a really strong El Nino where that jet stream that really runs about down around Cuba drifts up to us, and our regular jet stream goes north, you get these wild oscillations back and forth. And this extreme cold weather was sitting over China for the last month, and suddenly it shifted. You remember a year or so ago, this big pocket of super cold air sat over Texas. And well, that's kind of like what we're seeing now. It's sloshing back over to our side, and it's been over there and basically stable for 3.5 weeks, just sitting there in China. And now it's rolled back over the top, and that's going to slosh down on us. So, welcome to 2024. Jerry, good evening. Reinhardt, hello. How you doing? Let's talk about keeping skin covered up in this weather. How do you all keep it covered up? Usually for me down here, our temperatures don't drop that bad, but they can. Okay. And so one of the big things is this big old gap around the neck. You lose so much heat there. I'll have a rolled up shemagh or one of those. You've seen me demonstrate and talk about those wool and the mesh scarves. Sniper bells. I'll tuck that in around to tuck this in. As far as the face or whatever, putting the hood up on an M65 to act like a shield against the wind is a big thing. And in worst case scenarios, get a baklava and cover the face. Hands gonna be gloves. If you got exposed skin, it needs to have a reason. Like I have to have my hands free to do this. I can't do it with gloves or whatever. Otherwise, you need to be covered in extreme cold wind, especially in the blowing cold wind. That'll suck it down faster than anything else and get you numb and or frostbite very, very quickly. So always try to protect from the wind more than anything else. Yep, very true, Gray Wolf. You probably gonna have decent weather. It's probably gonna warm up as that cold slops down in the middle of the country. It's probably gonna suck up on your side warmth up from the Pacific, and the Pacific's very warm right now. So, Dark Meta, hello. Number one Big Bear, good evening. Jeff, Victoria, Australia, 30C. That's pretty warm. Briar Smoke, good evening to the Sierras. $40 higher than usual. Yep. You're going to have a good warm winter relatively. And we get the cold this time. It slops down on us. George, good evening. Oh, believe me, Gray Wolf, I have duct taped the end of my jackets tight before to keep wind from going up it when I'd be up north doing jobs where I had to be out and exposed. Oh, yeah. Diane, good evening. You seal up every hole you can. If the buttonhole is too big, I don't use buttons. I want something zipped up, and I swear I could feel air coming around a zipper. You know, it felt like it had a jet of cold air hitting me right there, and it was coming around a zipper. So. Yeah, I know he's talking about putting something over the protect. Back when I used to go up north back in the 80s and driving truck and doing military radars and weather radars for NOAA and for Enterprise Electronics, I had one of the deck masks like the Navy has that you put on that's got that nose that comes out. They were $5 surplus, and I got one and took it because I went up to I want to say the upper part of Michigan, and we had that wind coming just straight from the Arctic, just howling down through there. And this is one of those timed events. They don't care. It's got to be done. And I'm sitting there trying to put 9/16 bolts and bolt together this thing. And it was like 30, 25, 30 below with a 30, 40 mile an hour wind. It was ridiculous. And so, when the hairs in your nose start getting stiff and you do like that and your nose will bleed because everything's so dried out and the hairs actually poke you. It was an experience, I'll put it that way. Hello, Jeff to Missouri. Yeah, Brian, don't you got to be able to vent. So sealing up down here is pretty much okay, but I want to be able to vent here, have pit zips to be able to do it. Yeah, it makes a difference because if you ever sweat, you're doomed. Jerry, Blackie, do you ever use the small solid fuel stoves? I found a bunch at a thrift store so cheap I bought them for the grandkids. Yeah, they work really well. For a heat up or something like that. Cooking that's a little slow, but it was designed for heating up rations. So heating up coffee, putting the water in it and sticking it out there before they got the flameless ration heaters. That was the way that just about everybody heated up their rations. Was they would take and put them into a pot or put them into a canteen cup sideways and fill it up with water and put it on one of them Espit tabs or something like that and heat it up, immersion heat it, and works really, really well. And those tabs work good. And if you go look at around summertime, especially in Walmart, around the barbecue grills, there's going to be this block about this big, and it says barbecue lighter. And it's basically those fuel tabs that haven't been broken off. It's like, I think it's 20 or 30 of them on a tab for like $3. You can just snap them off and it does it. It's troxetane. It's exactly the same stuff. And so you can get a lot of refuels to go in your little bitty pocket stove, but they work well, especially if it's not super, super bitter cold. They work well. Cody, good evening. Well, Rebecca, thank you very much and Happy New Year to you too. Deb Van Patten, hello. Bubbly, hello to Indiana. Oh yeah, Gray Wolf, yeah. Or you go to breathe in and you can't. There's so much ice out here. You go, and it's like you've got a scuba dive mask off and you're trying to breathe through your nose. It'll scare you. CJ Guther, hello. Alexander, greetings to West Palm Beach, Florida. Y'all did you get any problems with that storm front crossing? And keep your eyes open. Got another one coming. Good evening, Miss Pam. I'm glad y'all did good too, Miss Pam, but got another storm front coming. It should be passing tomorrow, so. Gordon, sterno cans really are meant to heat. Yeah, they can eventually bring something to a boil. But I'd recommend a Trangia over a sterno if you're wanting to boil water, because usually I can boil a canteen cup of water in like 8 or 9 minutes or less with a Trangia, and it'll do it. It'll do it real well, and it doesn't weigh much, and fuel is cheap and available. So, and it's convenient to me sealing it up to carry as I do sterno. Now, sterno has a place, and I've talked about that, especially for the silver wolves. And sterno now has one that's a liquid type, tiki type torch things, a high heat version that might be a way to go too. You know, just depends on what you're needing to cook and etc. Tennessee Smoky, is there a particular theme for tonight's conversation? Not that I'm aware of, but it's just everybody throwing stuff out. But if you got a question, throw it at me, brother. Dark matter, yeah, that's one of the things. Get one of those self-starter logs, and especially the, I mentioned it in a video that's going to be posting, I think, Friday or Sunday. I like the Enviro one where it's wax cardboard recycled and pressed into a log. It's a lot of heat, and it's safe to cook on. And so you can bust those up into small pieces, and they do really well. I put it in my little bitty wood stove in my hot tent. I took one of them. It's too big to go in the door. I just busted it down into smaller rounds, look like a stack of bologna when I cut it, and just set it in on fire and slid it in there, and they burned 3 hours a whole log. So just stack them in there and let them kind of like domino fit in there, and I got like 2.5 hours of heat out of it. Lewis, I am, and thank you for asking. Gray Wolf, Blackie, have any experiences with older Ruger Hawkeye rifles? Mine seems to have like zero lead, like the throat freebore is cut with an end mill, no taper on the ends. Ooh. Well, usually the Rugers were pretty good, but a zero lead like that, something that's that, and you're sure that they haven't changed the barrel at some point, that somebody got a different caliber barrel and put it on and didn't cut a lead on it. Although there were some Wildcats back in the 80s that basically there was little or no. I don't know what the Wildcat was, but I do remember it was kind of controversial when popping up in several of the shooting mags about how the barrels for that particular thing basically were abrupt. I don't know what the caliber of yours is, but it'd be something the gunsmith could easily put a lead into if you needed. Just a chamber reamer would do that. Bill Van, sorry about the wind damage in California. Yeah, y'all are getting those storms rolling straight across now. It's going to be a wet year in California. Bud Lee, have you ever thought of doing some survival with Dave Canterbury? Yeah, we've talked back and forth. We're friends. We're not close friends, but we're like business associates. We're good. We talk to each other. He's on my phone. I'm on his phone. And we every time we get an event together, we sit and talk. So, yeah. In fact, I'm going to be at the Pathfinder School, which is going to be combining with the boot camp this year in May. So I'll be doing a class up there with it. Red sorghum. Yeah, California. But hey, that's nice weather. Don't complain. Buckeye 80. Glad to hear it, brother. What one man tent do you like? I really like the hot tent I got right now from One Wind Outdoors because I just put up a ridge line. And if I put four stakes up, four poles up, and six stakes, yeah, it's a wall tent. At the same time, if I don't want a wall tent, I can open one side out. So it's kind of like a baker tent. So I got a patio out here underneath the tarp, and I got my sleeping area in here. Same time, I can pull out both sides and have like a 14-foot across awning and hang a hammock or put a tarp or whatever on it. And it rolls up to about that big by that long and weighs like maybe 4 pounds, 3.5, 4 pounds. That's my favorite tent right now. And I really, really like it because I've got so many ways I can set that thing up and really enjoy it. I don't like a lot of the little pop-up tents. They're kind of limited and they always leak, at least for me. And for years, I've got away from a lot of the modern tents. You know, I really like that One Wind. I've got canvas Boy Scout tent, which is like the little small wall tent. I've got big old wall tent that me and my wife used to camp out in. And then she's got one or two pop-up types. It's the X poles that you get like at Walmart that she wanted to go and it was just going to be her and her friend. She had a lady that the two of them would go camp out at a park or something together because she was teaching the lady how to camp. And other than that, that's about it. I'm not up on the latest tents. I'm an old guy. I use what works for me and go with it. Yeah, Gordon, immersion heating and coffee. Yeah, Trangia is the way to go. Buckeye 80, what are your thoughts on the Lee Load-All 2? Very economical and makes usable ammunition. It really does. And once you learn the little subtleties of it, you can dial in a pretty nice load in that thing. It's very cost efficient, very reliable, and repeatable. And so I've used a Lee Load-All several times back when I was shooting a lot of shotgun. Jerry, I mean, everybody goes off topic in discussions, especially when you got this many people in here. Yeah, you got 85 people watching right now. Everybody's got a different topic they want to talk about. You just got to run with it. All right, Tennessee Smoky. Freezing temps coming and brought a question of mine. Tips for keeping water in a canteen or water bottle from freezing overnight at camp. Usually, if it's going to be that cold, I'm going to put it inside the sleeping bag with me or beside me so that I've got some body heat with it. And this can be working twofold. One, I would heat up a canteen cup full of water and pour into the canteen and then put the cap on, not boiling, but just really warm water. And then I would put today's socks. I would stretch over the canteen. So that's a hot water bottle. That went into the bottom of the sleeping bag. So it's doing two things. One, it's going to keep my water from freezing tonight, and two, it's going to warm my feet for a couple hours. And then my body heat will keep it from freezing. And so in the morning, whenever I get up and I put my clothes on, like I said, I always put my clothes underneath me. So therefore, when I roll up on one shoulder, I can reach under and pull my clothes. My clothes are warm because I've been laying on them. And I can then put my clothes on, reach, pull out that canteen. It's ready to pour into that canteen cup, and let's get something warm in it right then. So it's not frozen. That's the trick that I use the most. Bud Lee, I hear you. Because me, you bought your first hammock. Glad to help. Glad you enjoy it. It makes life, it makes life so much better. Jay's Modern Bushcraft and Survival. Hello. Gray Wolf, it's not a crazy idea. The shotgun starters were actually very popular back in the 30s and 40s because batteries were not that. A lot of those early vehicles used magnetos. And so if the cold and the batteries were not that reliable, and so if the cold killed your battery and you were 40 miles from nowhere, you were in tough. And so a shotgun starter, that's reading military aircraft use shotgun starters. A lot of tractors use shotgun starters, you know. Now, how are you going to get that to work with a modern engine? That's going to be the question. I'm not sure how you're going to do it, but, you know, anything's possible with enough time. And nothing's impossible if you have enough time and resources. Jay's Modern Bushcraft. I prefer either my oilcloth top for winter, okay, and my hammock bug net for 3 seasons, but I don't have underquilt, overquilt on it. Adding an underquilt makes a big difference. It really does. And I'd use just a big sleeping bag over me. I just turn it upside down and make an overquilt with it. And therefore, my under insulation is being taken care of by that underquilt, and on top is being taken care of by that sleeping bag. And my personal best was down to 6 degrees. I've been comfortable in a hammock with. Now I was running double underquilts. I had proper clothing on, and then I had a great big old huge 49 mountain bag on top of me. But I was warm. I didn't wake up cold once. So it can be done. You can be warm in a hammock. You just got to understand you got to layer up. Yeah, Gray, well, for a trapper themed ATV, something out there you could fire up in case of emergency that way, why not? All a Kickstarter is on a motorcycle is you make it rotate, right? So you could figure a way to make it a Kickstarter work with a shotgun shell. You know, all it is a kickstart. you, Pam, saw Discovery's video with 15 most used revolvers from the Wild West and had some of your pics and videos in it. I believe it. Yeah, on Discovery. I had a someone in Scandinavia sent me a thing of a television show from there, and in the middle of this television show, there's an 8-minute clip of me doing a video, doing a bushcraft thing, and the person is translating it into Dutch or whatever the language is there. And but it was me. I remember the video, so that's kind of cool. Yeah, Jay's Modern, reloading 223 30 more accurate. Absolutely. The 223 is far more accurate than the 556. 556, designed by military standard, is to be able to fit all shots inside of a hula hoop, 30-inch circle, at 300 meters for suppressive fire. 223 better be able to hit that bottle at 300 yards or you're not a varmint cartridge. So when we used to shoot competition, the guys wanted to cheat. See, they didn't want to shoot surplus 556 because they knew it'd have a big group. They wanted to shoot 223, and then they'd take the 223 cartridge and they'd dip it in vinegar before they brought it so that it would discolor the neck. And when they ejected, you'd look at it and it would look like it was annealed, like a 556. You wouldn't automatically go, wait a minute, because 223 isn't annealed and it's got that nice shiny neck and you ain't got that discoloration on it. And so they used to cheat that way. They'd mark them that way. When they ejected out, you didn't automatically notice he was shooting 223 because he wanted accuracy. He's trying to win bear money. Claymore Steel, good morning. Kenneth Gorham, Blackie, can you and Bear do an old ways on a bushcraft hand tool kit? Sure, be glad to do that. We haven't done anything like that in quite a while. The saws, axes, hatchets, hammers. What would you need? Yeah, we can do that. That'd be a good one. Eric Blackie, favorite pocket carry pistol and why? Most of my life, I've carried a full size gun. I haven't carried a little bitty pocket gun. But there have been times when I was wearing a suit and stuff, I did have something like that. And a Ruger GP 100 in 9mm is a really good small gun like that. And if you're looking for a little automatic, those little Ruger automatics right now are really nice, reliable, small, compact bar of soap that just slides in and out of a pocket. And ain't no big thing binding you and hooking your leg or nothing like that. So either one of them would be really good. But for a pocket gun, I want it to be a good enough caliber. I prefer 9mm minimum. 2, I want to make sure it will feed absolutely reliable with good hollow points. 3, I want it to be able to draw easily in and out of whatever clothes I'm wearing. And this is tested before I leave the house, to make sure if I did have to pull that I could get to it. And usually I'll have some sort of sheath over it that it fits down in so that it doesn't prevent the pulling, but it doesn't telegraph. So when you're standing there at the boss's party and everybody's standing there drinking and talking business, nobody looks down and notices the outprint of a 38 in your pants pocket or something. So that's my thing. So if I was going to recommend today, I'd say that little Ruger automatic they've got out now, or Ruger GP 100 with a short barrel and 9mm would be my recommendation. Tennessee Smoky, glad to do it. No, not this. This is Bargo's root beer. I don't drink beer. Sorry. I'm not anti, but I'm not a problem drinker. I'm one of those that the end of the day, when you're dead tired, that's a good time to take a shot glass of something 18-year-old and strong and go to bed. My days of heavy drinking in my 20s and 30s are long gone now. So I will social drink with family and friends and stuff, but it will be one drink I'll work through all night. I've got the same fifth of whiskey I've been working on for 5 years. That tells you how bad a drinker I am. So I have heard of Diamond Brand, but I haven't owned one. The most of the small tents that I've done have been Panther Primitive or Tent Smiths, are the two that I did during my rendezvousing a lot. Now the Boy Scout Master tent I've got, that's a wall tent that God knows when that thing was originally made. I can't tell. I don't know who actually manufactured it, but it's a very good canvas tent, and I'm very happy with it. They last forever as long as you take care of them. J Motter, maybe we could be going back to crank start Model T cars for the apocalypse. Tractors, a 18-wheeler or tractor years ago could run without a battery. All you just had to do was hook the two poles together and get it rolling, and it would fire up, and you could do it. You could pull it off of horses or whatever. Now today with modern stuff with all kinds of electronics, I'm sure you can't do that with a modern truck, a modern 18-wheeler. But the old vehicles that you might still find around, definitely a lot of the old tractors, they'd run, So everybody talks about an EMP and stuff like that, but there are things that you could figure out how to get going again, including a steam train. I remember somebody pointed out one time and that they would pay $500. It was some think tank thing out west. No, it was in Kansas City. And back about 2000, they were talking about if an EMP happened, that there would be no way to get from here to here, is what they said. You'd be back to horses and stuff like that. And anybody that could provide proof positive that they could get from this point to this point without using a gas engine or anything like that, they would pay $500. And they were looking for solar powered stuff or something like that. So this guys in Colorado had a steam train that was used for logging. It's a small one, but it's been made in 1890. And so they got permission to drive it from Colorado to Kansas on one of the freight lines, railroad tracks. So they put it up in a steam locomotive and said, pay us. you know, Flintlocks will still work. A lot of the old technology become real important again real quick. Okay. Adankor. Adacog? Adacord. If I'm saying that wrong, I apologize. But hello, hey, I'm doing well. Randy, Blackie, have you ever done any lost treasure, or cache hunting? I have not done any cache hunting. I did play around with some stuff down in Florida in my youth. Back in the days of the pirates, there was a pirate that they chased into Choctawhatchee Bay, and that's the river that's right over here, that where it goes in the Gulf. And the British chased him in right at, and his ship was badly damaged, and they knew he had looted a couple of high end, and they knew he had the stuff with him. That was what reason he couldn't outrun him. He was so laden, and he had pulled in there, and it was right after dark, and they decided we'll get him in the morning because he can't go nowhere. And right at first light, the British went in trying to find him, and they found the boat, but that was it. And they know that they offloaded it into canoes and stuff and took off going up into the swamps and stuff north of there. And so never found, never recovered. And I had a good friend that was north of Panama City that was a big pirate hunter and stuff like that. And he wanted to, me and him played around in some of them swamps and stuff, trying to get lucky and find pieces of eight and stuff like that. Never found any of that, but the only thing I ever found anything like that stood out was a girlfriend I had when I was early in high school. We'd gone to Panama City, and we were sitting there in the sand, the water splashing up at our feet, and it splashed a little bit. And I looked down, and there's a piece of green, and I picked it up, and I thought it was where a piece of a broken Coca-Cola bottle had rolled in the sand so long. It was this frosted piece of glass about the size of a jelly bean. And she liked it. And there was a place down there at that time that made t-shirts and everything. And they would make jewelry. They'd take that shark's tooth you just found. They'd make a necklace. And they made a necklace out of it. And here I am, we're like 17, 18 years old. That was it. Years and years later, we didn't keep up with each other, but the daughter and I got to met because daughter from her, she went and married a guy, etc. Not mine. And told me that they had that piece of glass that she'd wore 20 something years around her neck. We're going to go and have it fitted because she wore it all the time as a good luck charm. And found out it was actually not a piece of glass. It was actually a piece of some precious gem that there'd been a ship went down in the Gulf called the Atocha that had all these raw gems on it. It was one of them that washed up in Panama City, and we found it. And it was worth a pretty good bit of money. That's the only thing I ever found like that. Okay, let me catch back up. It'll kill. Good evening. Benton Lizzie, yeah. Some of them early Land Rovers did have hand cranks. Some of the early Jeeps even had something like that. Stanford Brown, good evening. Well, yeah, Gordon, that's thing. Flintlock rifles, steam generators, all of it. That technology worked, and we built the Industrial Revolution with it. Oh, yeah, we replaced it with much superior. But just because we replace it don't mean it's completely useless. Just like me talking about cap and ball revolvers. Yes, they're much more modern, more advanced guns than muzzleloaders. However, it was effective back then. It's still effective today. And I've got good friends that have put a lot of very impressive deer in the freezer with a bow and arrow, you know, and they're good with spears too. In Alabama for several years, you could hunt deer with spear, and they took great pride on getting close enough to actually take a deer with a spear. So yeah, don't discount the old technologies. Yes, it is primitive. Yes, it isn't as good as our modern, but when there's nothing else available, it is a good choice. Yeah, Randy T. A lot of those, especially the bigger trucks, once they were running, the alternator's powering it, and you could actually detach the battery on some of them. Now, my old Chevy couldn't. When you pull the terminal off, it went dead. But some of the bigger, like diesel trucks, yeah. I, I, my first diesel truck that I drove was a white Road Boss, and you could get it running, and you could take the battery out and run over here and get somebody else's truck running and come back and put your battery back in, you know. Jay's monitor is because it was so rare, and we know it was on the manifest from there, and it was finally found. The Atocha was found down there in the Gulf sometime in the late 80s or early 90s. They found the Atocha, and that where they figured out it must have come from is from that. Miss C, good evening. Ronald, Blackie, any chance of a return production of the wool blanket? I don't think so. Um, Ordering those overseas out of the UK and the mills and everything, it just I prefer to do business where I can be a little early or a little late. I realize life is the way it is, but I prefer to be on time. I really work to be on time. But when you say it'll be here in April and it's December and we still ain't seen them yet, no, we're not important to that manufacturer enough to do it. So it's just not worth the risk of taking people's money and doing a run and then may or may not get it for God knows how long. It's just too risky. Don't like to do business that way. Randy T, you must have made quite an impression on that girl for her to wear that necklace for 20 years. I will just say that it was a cherished keepsake of hers. She considered it her lucky charm. Yep. B, what day does the spring meet up? The gathering will begin on April the 8th. That's a Monday, and will run till April the 14th. Same place as before. Andy Knight, good evening to South Georgia. And as far as the Silver Wolves class, that will be the weekend before that will start on Friday and end on Sunday. And then the next day begins the gathering. I'm talking to the instructors right now, and we will have something very soon. That what we're doing now, we put the slots in, and we're figuring out who's teaching what class when. And very, very soon we will have that detailed out, and I will put that information out there to any of the Silver Wolves that want to come to it. We'll give you a syllabus of what classes are going to be taught when, and a rough little synopsis of what will be taught in the class. Okay, but that's coming. Yes, Geneva State Forest, Lower Alabama. Ronald, since there were production issues with the wool blanket, what is your suggestion for alternatives which you'll advise in future videos? Good question. Wool is going to be always one of the first choices. My second choice is down, as long as it's going to be dry. And then third is going to be some sort of synthetic. But I'm hoping that we get a wool mill to fire back up here in the U.S. next couple of years. We've had them in the past. We don't now, but I would really, really like it if we got a wool mill going here. They'd be making wool blankets again and other wool products here in America. I would really be happy about that. Oh, Jay Modern. The gathering is located at Geneva State Forest Lake in Lower Alabama. If you'll look at lower central Alabama, you're going to see a great big national forest called Conecuh, which will look like Conecuh, but Conecuh National Forest. On the right-hand side of it is Geneva State Forest. They butt together. It's just you crossed the line, and it became a state forest instead of being a national forest. And it's 7,000 acres, and there's a big lake there. That lake's over a mile from one end to the other, shaped kind of like a pair of bat wings. And there's plenty of camping spots there. We got plenty of trees. The state provides a single porta potty, so we may need to provide a little additional for that, the amount of people showing up. There is the only water on site is the lake, so bring a filtration if you need to do that, or bring your own water. I will provide firewood to the event, and we have I think it's maybe it's 10 or 15 picnic tables, which are the big concrete picnic tables, and fire pits and big trash cans there, and it's easy in, easy out. If you go back and look at my playlist and look up the gathering, you'll get to see I've videotaped it many times and posted on my channel. It'll kill. Blackie, do you have any fishing tips for this time of year? Go deep. Fish get cold. They don't truly hibernate, but they get cold and they slow down, and they just go and find some places, no current or nothing, where they ain't got to fight, and they just sit there. They will occasionally eat, and so slow and deep, something trolling along the bottom, might get their attention enough. They're lethargic, so don't be thinking of a hot, fast hit like you get in the summer. It'll be just, you think you hung up. You'll be going along, and suddenly the line will get tense. Just keep reeling, and then gently lean back. Don't yank, because you might pull it right out of their mouth. But that is a trick that does work this time of year. Morgan Freeman, I just replied to you. You asked me this question on a video today, and I just replied to you a little while ago. And I sent you the thing to go to it, and it is handmade by C3GAC.com. That's the lady that does it. And when you go to the site, she does candles and soap and stuff, but it also lists mine. She makes it for me. So that's where you go to get it. And she'll ship it to you. Woo, Gordon, yeah. Swiss bedroll, canvas tarp, wool blanket, leather straps to hold the roll together. It's $246. Do you know cheaper? Do you really want canvas? Because you can do contact the surplus place and get a bivy sack, one of the military bivy sacks for like 60, $70, and then put your own blanket inside of it, and then just come up with all you need is a strap and a pair of dog collars, just a pair of straps to hold it together, and do the same job. If you go look at my playlist not long ago, I believe it is in the Ground Pounder series, I talk about a surplus cowboy bedroll, and I show you how I made up one. So it would be a distinctly cheaper than that. That Swiss bedroll looks really good, but a lot of the cowboy bedrolls, big old piece of heavy canvas and everything, throw it down on the ground, get on it. Yeah, no. Those guys are out where there is no trees, no nothing, out in the Great Plains, and you're just going to lay down flat on the ground because ain't nothing else. So yeah, they carry a heavy canvas bag as a outer tent, so to speak, and just crawl up in it with a blanket or a sleeping bag inside of it. It's the way they do it. But even they complain about it. So, and I have a good friend that spent $400 for a big money cowboy bedroll, and he was no warmer. He was warmer in the hammock with underquilt and all than he was on it. And he pointed out, I could buy the entire one wind set, hammocks, tarps, everything, and be less than $400. And he said, I paid $450 for this, and I'm freezing my butt off laying on the ground. So it's up to you. I hope you find what really works for you. Yeah, Jay's Modern. I have a cord of firewood I bring in to make sure we got good firewood. Fun in the Woods. Was Conecuh name for the sausage or the sausage name for the forest? Actually, it county is Conecuh County down there, and the Mobilian native tongue, it was Conca, which means turkey. A concachedo means turkey, and so Conca, and it actually meant bird. And the sausage company came later, so it was originally an area that was known for hunting, especially of turkeys. I believe the original native name was Place of Turkeys, and then it became Conecuh. White America called it Conecuh, so it became Conecuh, and then the sausage company started up over. It's not far from me. In fact, I get a lot of Conecuh sausage because of that. It'll kill. You're welcome. Jim Ruger, yeah, you can get good wool. Sportsman's Guide's a good source for wool blankets as well. Randy, I have not. I know what you're talking about. That the Welshman, they said, came over and explored the lower part of the South, but I've never seen none of that documented or anything about it. But we know there was all kinds of stuff going on down here. I mean, there's there's mounds down here. I'm within 45 minutes of, well, I'll take that back. I'm within an hour and a half of 4 Indian mounds. So there were mound builders here, Mississippian, historic, all of it. And then there were Europeans that came in here that we know of. We know that whenever the oldest city in the United States is St. Augustine, and that was because the French had came in at the Florida-Georgia border and made a little port, and they claimed it was for religious purposes. Bull. They were actually hoping to prey upon the Spanish galleons that were coming out of Central and South America and hugging the coast all the way back up and heading to Europe. They thought they'd plunder them. Spain found out about it and came in, and the guy built a fort, and that was the birth of St. Augustine. And then they made one day's march, about 12, 14 miles, and they would build a fort, which they called a mission, and it goes all the way from St. Augustine, Florida, all the way across lower Georgia, turns, comes up on the Alabama side of the Chattahoochee River and goes above Eufaula, Alabama to a place called Trinity, Alabama. And that was in the 1600s. They were doing that. So there were a lot of people from Europe over in this way, from various things that came over and did their own thing, even all the way back to the Viking era. So there's been people here somewhere. Keith Hicks, Happy New Year to you too. We're not going to go with that first pack patch, and I'm going to tell you why. The cost. We're looking at getting silverwood patches done, and then having them locally add something to it for that first pack. But you can get, I believe it was for 20 patches, it was going to be $300 to have first pack patches, and you could get 50 patches for like $100 if it wasn't the first pack, if it was just a generic patch. So we're still playing with that. We're not done. I'm not completely done with that. My idea is to get that same Silverwolf patch as a generic patch to give all the Silverwolf graduates who come to the class, and then take 15 of them and have them re-embroider on top of that first pack, and then contact. We still got the stuff from the class to send to the first pack and let them get a patch. That'd be a little different. We're still in the flux of that, but I'm not giving up. We're trying. Ronald, yes. Camo Gore-Tex bibby, thermal rest, and a wool blanket, or another sleeping bag. But yeah, a modern day take on the cowboy bedroll. Jade Modern, yes, I am very aware of One Wind and run One Wind products a lot, and I'm very, very happy with them. I've turned a lot of people on to One Wind. You can't beat it for the price. It's not meant to be really a backpacker's hammock, to be honest. It's a little heavy for that, or a little bulky for that, but the quality is great and the price is outstanding. And for somebody just going to do a little tent camping, canoeing, or short hikes, yeah, fantastic. Way to go. I mean, the strength of them and everything is just ridiculously overbuilt. I've been using mine now for 4 years, and it shows no signs of wear, nothing, even though I've hung it in all kinds of conditions. So, in fact, it slings up in my study in here a lot of nights when I'm hurting real bad. I'll tell the wife, love you, and I go to my study and I get my hammock because my back just can't relax unless I do it. Gray Wolf, yeah, those pelts like that, I have seen them at events, like you're talking about reindeer pelts and stuff. Up in your cold ice world, yeah, I could see that. Down here in my neck of the woods, it'd be way overkill. Oh yeah, there used to be a Tandy Leather used to carry them, where you could get them either to make projects out of, make vests and stuff, or actually just to get for a throw to put on a couch or something. And so the fur's like that thick. I mean, your hand just goes into it. It is impressive. Big old reindeer fur. Claymore Steel. Sorry to hear that. Yeah, bug net. If you're going to be around insects, you need a bug net. That's a good idea, Gray Wolf. It'll kill. Good night. Thank you for coming in. Tim Pierce, please tell us about the artwork used as a thumbnail button for your recent videos. I have figured out how to use the AI on Windows 11, and they give you whether you ask for it or not. And I have the more creative, descriptive your description, the more in detail it can render. And so I tell it what I want, and it creates that thumbnail. And it's I've been very impressed with what it's coming. Now you gotta give detail, you know. Like I'd say, old woodsman, gray haired, some beard, with a broad brim hat, sitting on a stump, lake behind him, tall forest, holding a calendar, pointing at a date on the calendar. I mean, that I wrote that much and it gave me that picture, which it gives you a choice of 4 pictures. It renders 4 at one time, and then I picked the best one. And what's kind of tickled me is I've noticed several of mine have showed up on other people's sites now as their thing for their channel, you know, or their logo or whatever. It's one of those videos, one of those that I popped up. It just old blind, you know, even a blind hog will find an acorn every so often. And I got pretty good at figuring out how to get this thing to produce what I want. So I get an idea in my head of the image, and then I go from that. And the one I did where it was the cat laying up on the fur on the table while he's tying knots, that was about a 20-minute typing to get that to render that. But it was worth it. I just have a very active imagination, and I can apply that and get it to do it. And so that's where it's coming from. Gordon, I went to a cabin, the place held together by wood pegs instead of nails. Is there a reason for square pegs in a round hole? Yes, friction. Wood will naturally expand and contract. And so if you put a round peg into a round hole, the round peg has no choice, but over time as it dries out, it will contract and therefore become loose. But a square tapered peg nailed into a round hole will not, because it's, instead of a uniform even pressure, it spikes of pressure, so those points will never pull out, and those gaps between the points where the flat square, you know, get that gap right in there, that allows the wood to expand up without pushing out and cracking, and it allows it to shrink back without losing tension. So a square peg in a round hole does a good job. It holds well. Claymore steel. The IKEA sheepskin rug has been wonderful butt insulation in a hammock when it actually got a little cold in Australia. Yeah, I used to have sheepskins I'd put on my chairs and stuff, and I'd sleep on in Living History for that very reason. They're very nice. Being in a hammock, though, you still got to have something you're not compressing it. And a sheepskin's a good choice because it's all wool, and it's not subject to be compressed to where it's not as good an insulator. So it's bulky, but it'd be a good choice. Jay's Modern. Yeah, a lot of people use Carvana. Carvana. Canva. My good friend Dan Lutz and James Bender tried to get me to do that, to do my thumbnails. And I just made up thumbnails. But once I discovered that I could do this on here, it's very quick. And I can type fairly fast. I form an idea of what I need, and it'll generate it for me really quick. Okay, Ronald, Blackie, I took your advice on acquiring polypropylene long johns for winter, but my surplus location crew are too lazy to pull out 5-button sweater. Literally had to order it online and pick up. Uh, the place that I go to, that military surplus place, I know they got tons of those long johns and stuff for $5. You know, for a top, I think it's $5 or $10. Might be $10 for a top and $10 for a bottom. $20 for a set, and that's where I pick up mine at. And the 5-button sweaters, I've got a couple, but let's face it, most of those are back when the guys were scrawny, and I've got them. I've got two, and I was lucky to get them that big that would fit me. Most time they're too small for me. Yeah, dark matter with AI, good. You making thumbnails and all with it. Outback Al, glad you got it. Hope you have many years of adventures with it. Preacher man, I agree with you. With this coming out, this storm, if it turns into an ice storm, and that's a possibility, because the jet stream is doing this deep dip, and that bottom end, when it hooks into the Gulf, you just turn the water hose on. It's going to suck moisture off the Gulf, and that's going to blow straight up that line. And all your major storms of New England starts down here with us because of that. And so you could see ice storms all over mid-America and New England because of that, because it's going to suck so much moisture up there. So time now to get set up. Like I said, I went and got basically half a cord today and got it split and busted like I wanted and stacked and put in so that if we have an ice storm and everything shuts off, I got warmth in the house. I can cook. I can take care of us. So, but I'm laying in provision because usually when this oscillation, this sloshing starts, it ain't a one-time deal. So it'll slosh over and we'll be super cold, and then it'll quit, and a week later, here it comes again. Because once it starts that dance around the planet. So I want to be prepared between now. It'll disappear probably in March. But between now and March, I want to be prepared. Preacher man, we've only lightly touched on it. My thoughts are this: it's that blob of super cold air. It sat over China from about mid-December till about the 2nd or 3rd of January, and they were having record lows of like 50 below in places. It is so big, and it is so intensely cold, and it is so tall that it's actually pulling cold from space, because that cold air is sinking up there. And as it sinks, it's actually pulling that 300 below zero cold up yonder. It's not going to be 300 below zero, but it's cold, straight down. And it does this. And it's got the jet stream on the bottom of it, and it's just kind of wallering with it. And that's how you remember a year ago, whatever, in Texas, that cold blob came down and just sat in Texas for a week with ridiculously cold temperatures that didn't make sense. It's because that cold air is so massive, so cold. This should be sitting over the North Pole. That's what it should be doing. It should be sitting there held in place, but it's slopped off to the side. But it's still that cold, and it's still that much pulling that air up the outside and down through the middle and chilling it to ridiculously temps. So hopefully it will be relatively brief, that it'll come over us and move on. Claymore Steel, yes, James Bender is that guy from Waypoint Survival. Really good guy. Mark Birds, good evening. You are correct. J Modern Clip Champ comes with it. Ronald, Blackie, any chance for or you do a video on your pistol belt setup with an Alice clip pouch you suggest using and how to outfit it for daily activities? Yeah, I can do that. I think I've got most of my pouch. I know I still got quite all my ammo pouches and stuff. I know I got canteens. Don't know if I got a first aid. I know I got the compass pouches. But I'll rig it up and show you how I used to run it a lot. We're using a duty belt or a web belt. So yeah, I'll do a video on that. Yeah, Sir Smoke a lot. Yeah. Well, it's that type of when we get this warm El Nino, this strong El Nino, which that jet stream that normally runs about like Cuba, it comes up, and the jet stream that we're normally used to in America, it either goes way up. And so that means that the north actually has a fairly mild winter, but that really cold stuff slops over through Canada down into upper New England, like you in New York or whatever, the Ohio Valley, or down through the plains, and that's what gets me. It has to come through the plains to get to me. Otherwise, there's that jet stream going back north will turn it. That's the reason Florida is kind of shielded from it, because it's got to cross the jet stream, and they'll never do that. But stranger things have been known to happen where it's dipped that far down. I can remember when they had snow flurries in northern Miami once. Of course, it was back in like 96 or something, but it was an extreme cold came down, and they actually had little light snow flurries in northern Miami. Of course, it didn't last, didn't do nothing, but but those people down there don't even have heaters in their homes. They don't need them. So, like you guys way up north, don't have air conditioners. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah, preacher man, exactly. Texas was frozen for quite a while. I've got good friend Mark, Justin Coon is a good friend of mine there, and so is William Collins, and they were out there in Texas, and they were having a real tough time with that cold. It didn't make sense how cold it was. And at the same time, Canada and Alaska were having a relatively mild, snow-free, time, and they were talking about how temps were 30 degrees or 40 degrees above normal for them for the winter. Now the cold's in Texas. Oh yeah, Mark Burris. I can remember an ice storm whenever I was a kid that hit us, and it was like that. It was like everything was glass. It layered up, and I could understand it blowing this way, but it's like it enveloped the whole tree. Every limb. And since our trees are not used to such things, limbs were falling everywhere. Power lines were snapping from the weight of it. Roofs would freeze, and then the whole sheet would slide off. It would slide off. Bam. You know. Oh, we had a neighbor that one Christmas, she wanted to make a winter wonderland, and so it was going to get down to about like 18 degrees that night. So she got the bright idea to put one of them big garden waterers with a water hose on the roof and let it freeze the roof and have icicles, and the yard would be white, and we'll come out on Christmas Day and it'll be a winter wonderland. Yeah, our roofs aren't set up for that. And so after that thing had been going about 6 hours, and there's about 3 to 4 inches of ice froze on that roof, and then it went sliding and tearing the roof to pieces. It just took shingles with it. The mass was so much. Yonder it went. And her car was sitting there, and this several 100 pounds of ice fell off and crushed her car. It was not a bright idea. Funny, but not a bright idea. Mike B, we had snow in Central Florida in 74. I remember that year. That's when we got like, I think 6 inches or 7 inches of snow in Enterprise. That was 74. I flew out the door like a rocket. I'd always wanted to see snow, never seen it. And I was laying on the couch asleep, and it had snowed while I was asleep. And when my grandmother woke me up and told me, now it snowed, I didn't even ask. Out the door I went. You know, I had to see snow. Hiram, hello. I hear you, Hiram. The river is within just a couple of feet of the bridge down here at Clayhatchee. And then we got this big rainmaker about to hit us tomorrow. So they're warning us we may have to maybe some road closures due to flooding. There. Blackie, I like your being sneaky series. Did I hear you were going to do more on Rumble with them? Yes. I am going to be doing more of the being sneaky series on Rumble where I can talk more freely than I can on YouTube about certain topics. So there will be something coming. I've got a muzzle loading shotgun where I'm talking about a flintlock this Saturday. And I've got a list of being sneaky things I'm going to do, but I've got so many irons in the fire right now, but I will be doing it, and I'll try to warn y'all ahead of time when I'm doing a being sneaky is going to be coming out on Rumble. But I'm trying to post at least once a week to Rumble on Saturday some kind of content that I can't put on YouTube. So it'll either be a gun or it might be some being sneaky or something else. Kodak, well, welcome. Yeah, John Loudermilk, it is a good time to test it. Good night, Outback Owl. Have a happy New Year to you as well. Friend, supposed to be 8 degrees this Sunday. We have a black powder shoot second Sunday of every month. I'd still go. Ain't nobody else going out there. Them guys are all too old. Guys, it'd just be me. I understand. Yeah, Bear, I remember the ice storm in 73 or 74 when it was. You could hear the trees exploding because the water froze inside. I remember that. Yeah. The one and only Nicole. Good evening. Yeah, friend, I had a really good friend many years ago named um, oh my God, Captain Leonard Bass. And he was always the one that if we were having a shoot, it didn't matter if it was a hurricane. He was going to be there. And we had a camping event planned, and it had been raining just ridiculous for days and days. Everything was soup. And yet he still went out there and set up his tent, and it was just still howling rain. And he's sitting in the tent, and the water had come up in the tent about an inch deep in the tent. He's sitting on his cot, got his feet up on a stool, sitting there. He's got a little stove going. He's got his coffee going. When somebody said, "Hello?" And he said, "Yeah." And he opened up the flap of the tent, and there was a guy in a boat about 10 feet away looking at him going, "You do realize you're in a flood, right?" And when he looked out and looked, there was no dry land for like 200 yards. The water had come up about 3 or 4 inches deep where he was, but the river had overflowed its banks. And this guy was going up and down the river looking for rescue. And here's this tent sitting out here in the middle of nowhere with smoke coming out. So he came over, he had loaded his gear into a boat to take him back to where his truck was at the landing. So he was going to be there. I miss old Captain. David Neal, hello to New Zealand. Jerry, what is a good beginner ammo loader that's not too expensive? You want to try it out? LeePrecision.com. Lee makes quality ammo, accurate ammo, and their price is cheaper than anybody else. The world record at 1,000 yards in shooting competition for like 4 years running was using a $20-something Lee hand loader to load his ammunition at the range the day he had to shoot and compete every time. And a lot of the big names were begging him to use their gear for advertising. He said, no, I've used Lee products my entire adult life. And I'm going to tell you, it's a good quality piece of gear, makes good quality ammunition. And look at that. Now, if you want to just try out, I'm not sure what I'm doing yet, get the Lee Loader's Manual. In fact, I got it right here within range. I can do this without dumping stuff all over me. This is an older one, but Modern Reloading by Richard Lee. Get one of these, get it off eBay, get it used or whatever, and the first half of the book goes in depth, assuming you don't know nothing. And it's going to tell you every step and why. He explains like I explain. And when you get done reading that part, 90% of this is all load for different, but when you get done reading that, you'll have a good working knowledge of what you need and how you need to reload. And then follow the Lee stuff because it's already dialed down 10%, so you can't overload and get in trouble with it. So that's what I recommend. Everybody, if you're getting started, that's where I'd go. Oh, man, Mike B., yeah. I've had numerous people want me to just write a book on talking. So, in fact, back when I was in college in the late 90s, there was a English professor there at the college that greatly enjoyed my stories and asked could he record my stories. And I said, sure. And so for about 6 months, I'd come over to his office once or twice a week, and we'd just sit and talk, and I'd tell my stories. And he recorded them and was going to put them in a book about the Southern experience. Now, I don't know if he ever did. He retired a few years after I left college, and I hadn't seen or heard from him since. But I know he's got a probably 50, 60 hours of my stories recorded. So it'd be funny if it showed up. There was somebody up here earlier pointing out that they were on Discovery Channel and there was a video about me and guns popping up on it from my video stuff. So you never know where your stuff's going to end up. Whoops, sorry. Keep yelling, Lieutenant. We'll find you. Yeah, Ronald, you need Bear's cookbook. I agree with you. Yeah, there you go. Gordon, $20 on Amazon, Modern Reloading by Richard Lee. Get that and read it, and it will give you a good working knowledge to be able to ask intelligent questions about the topic. You'll know where you need to go. And then you go to Lee's site and pick up the gear. And like I said, I use Lee for all my stuff in reloading and have been nothing but happy, both for shotguns, rifles, precision stuff, general purpose stuff. The molds I use to make round balls for my muzzleloaders, all Lee molds. You know, good stuff at a decent price. Jeff Donnelly, Blackie, you tell him stories. Come on now, I don't believe that. I know. Shocking, isn't it? J Modern, Blackie, are you a homesteader? Actually, no. The house I have was already here when I got here. It was my wife's, but I have greatly enhanced it. You know, like I got the fireplace to work. She never used the fireplace when my wife got this house. Was a former marriage. The house was built for her by her dad, and that was hers, but she never used the fireplace. And so once I showed her how we could heat the house with the fireplace, and where all these extra closets were meant to be a pantry for storing canned goods and stuff, and the reason this funny blank section in the wall right here where you got two big outlets is where our deep freezer should go. You know, the guy that built the house was building it to be self-sufficient. She just didn't know. So I have made a lot of improvements. Well, hello, Jonathan Frisbee. Thank you, brother. Hope you're staying warm and happy up there. And Happy New Year, brother. Yeah, Ronald, I actually thought about that, and just go ahead and record the stories. And I want to sit down with Grouch like we've done. My plan is once this storm gets by next week, if things go well, I went and saw him last weekend. I'll go over and spend an afternoon with him and set the camera up, and we'll do some more of us talking. We'll do camp stories. That'd be a good thing for me and him to talk about, and just do camp stories. Marcus Hibben, Blackie, do you believe in the possibility of Bigfoot? Okay. And I've told this before. When you go to the Smithsonian, they have, or did have, on display, you walking around, you're looking at all these, you know, you got the woolly mammoths, and you got the big jaws that you step through for the sharks and all this stuff. And you come around this corner, and at the end of this little hallway is this great big old glass case, and in it is a Bigfoot. And when you get up there, there's a plate that says, "This is not a Bigfoot. This is an Australopithecus gigantus. This was commonly called the rock ape. It was in Asia, Europe, Siberia, North America, but went extinct 10,000 years ago. It was called a rock ape. And they've got bones that they've excavated and found of this thing in it. And the life size, and right next to it is this like a half of an articulated skeleton showing it to you. And that's in the Smithsonian. Now, like I pointed out, when I was a little boy in Enterprise Public, Alabama Public Education, and we in like third or fourth grade, and we were talking about natural history, and we were talking about woolly mammoths and dinosaurs and saber-toothed cats, I would have remembered them mentioning that there was a 7-foot ape that used to walk around in Alabama and North America. I would have remembered that. They never mentioned that at all. And so, could such a creature? It did exist. Could such a creature exist today? And the way back of Alaska, the way back of some places, possible. I'd give you that option. But not in the lower 48, and dang sure not in the lower 48 Eastern, because we fought wars here. We fought the Civil War. We fought Indian wars. We had the Great Depression and everything. If it was out there to be killed and ate, we did it. You know, somebody would have done shot one and put it on a spit. So I would say, could such a creature exist? Like I said, in those far-flung places, it did exist. The archaeologists admit that such a creature did exist. but they claim it went extinct 10,000 years ago. So you make up your mind from that. Ron Priester, hello and Happy New Year to Nashville. Yeah. Yeah, now the redhead giants in Arizona, they found all kinds of evidence for that, both DNA and etc. When you go to DeSoto Caverns in Alabama, and they're giving you the tour, right? For those you don't know about it, it's a big cave complex in Alabama. If you look it up, DeSoto Caverns, you'll find it. It's a state park. And it's been used. It was the first official recognized cave in North America. It was reported to George Washington, the possibility of using it as some sort of fort or something like that, a stronghold down here against Indians. But it goes back thousands and thousands of years of occupation, etc. The reason I'm bringing this up is when you go through the tour and they're taking you, they show you this part of the cave, and it was excavated because the native people who had lived here before would take their dead and put them up on platforms and let nature take its course until it was nothing but bones. And they would gather up the bones and they would weave a basket and put the bones into the basket and bring them down here in the cave and put them in this chamber, so that you had basket on top of basket on top of basket. Think of it like a crypt or a mausoleum, okay? Like you see over in Europe after the Great Plagues and stuff, where it's just stacks of bones and stuff like that. Well, archaeologists excavated that place, and they did a 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot deep, and found the remains of, I think, 7 individuals. What stuck out to me was that the average height was 6'8" to 7 foot. So, of course, old Blackie's hand goes up. There's 30, 40 people in this little down. Excuse me. You're saying that we had 7 foot tall natives of some kind in Alabama in the not completely unheard of history. Where we got one of these skeletons at here on display? We don't have that. Where at the state archaeological lab can I go see one of these things? Oh, they don't have one. You got 7 foot tall skeletons and you ain't even got one on display. And you're trying to attract tourists. Yeah. So if they ain't even going to put that up, they ain't going to put up Bigfoots. If they walked out in the middle of downtown, they wouldn't put them up. Forget it. Morris, hello to Serbia. What do you think about using silicone percussion cap keepers on black powder revolvers? Very time consuming. I know when they first came up with them, it was for the muzzleloading rifles, and it was a way to try to waterproof it, where you could, where the rifle nipple and the cap came down, it would seal around it, and in wet conditions keep it better. And then somebody figured out you could put them on percussion revolvers as well. Very time consuming, but it does work, because when it fires, that piece of elastic rubber holds the fragments together and keeps them from jamming up the gun. It can work, but it is time consuming. I played with it a very little amount years ago, and I just found other ways to try to play with it. And in my percussion revolver series, I talk about cap jams, how to do tips and tricks to greatly reduce cap jams without having to resort to the little rubber tubing on it. John Loudermilk, not sure what the wife and I heard at Talladega National Forest. Okay, here's something you didn't consider, and I pointed out at my gatherings, and it's absolutely as real as you can get. We had several years, 10 or 12 years ago, 14 years ago now, you had one of the major hurricanes rolled over Florida, and they had a big tourist attraction where they had gorillas and chimps and apes. Thing got tore up, and a lot of the apes got out. And so, if you'll do a search on the thing for skunk ape in Florida, you'll get this picture that was taken in Tallahassee of this woman took in her backyard where a big old palm frond right here, and you can see behind it, obviously it's an old chimpanzee. That's where that come from. Well, that place that got tore up had 2 silverback gorillas that never showed up. Why is Blackie bringing this up? Because outside of Talladega National Forest a couple of years ago, if you'll do a search for gorilla in Alabama, you had a small town of probably like population 1,600. And everybody at noon was at the little small local diner eating when a gorilla come walking down Main Street in front of God and everybody, a silverback gorilla. And so, where I hold my gathering at Geneva State Forest, over on the far end of Conecuh State Forest, someone snapped a picture during a thunderstorm on the edge of the interstate that he thought was a Bigfoot. It looks more like a gorilla. So we may have a gorilla running around Low Alabama. You never know what you're going to find. I point out at my gathering that there was an ostrich farm near Opp, Alabama, got tore up by a tornado, and a lot of the ostriches got loose and got into the woods. And for a couple of years, people were reporting sightings of wild ostriches running around in the woods. Ostriches and gorillas and monkeys in Lower Alabama. So now we got anacondas and capybaras, and life is changing. Jaguar. In the South, we talked about a black panther. Now, that was different than a mountain lion or a cougar. And they're forgetting a piece of history. When the conquistadors conquered the Aztecs, there was a group of Indians living on the northern reaches of that were subservient to the Aztecs. And they took this opportunity to skedaddle. And they went north into what is now Arkansas and lived for a time in some caves there. And then they worked their way east. And so by the mid 1600s, they'd came in and conquered all the indigenous tribes in Lower Alabama. Those Indians were called Muskogee. They were out of Mexico. And they became known as the Creek Confederacy, the Creek Nation. The whites call them Creek Indians. Okay. But they call themselves Muskogee, and they were red stick, white stick. Red stick meant that you were full blood, this Mexican Indian, and Muskogee, and white stick meant that you were not, you were one of the conquered tribes. Okay. Why am I bringing this up? The symbol for strength and virility of a chief or a shaman was a jaguar, like they'd had in northern Mexico. And so they'd make pilgrimage to go get jaguar and bring them up here and keep them. Well, by the time of the early 1800s and the Trail of Tears and all like that, all the tribes being moved out, those were all in the swamps up here. And there's a picture that was taken in 1878, I believe it was, over here in Mississippi, about even with me. And it shows a little girl, about a 10-year-old girl, sitting on a 250-pound spotted jaguar that they'd killed in one of the cane breaks over there. And it says, Black Panther killed in the cane breaks. It's a spotted jaguar. When you go to the zoo and you see those things that's black, you go, "Ooh, that's a black panther." And until the light hits it right, and you see it spot on spot, it's a black jaguar. They do exist. They're in Mexico. And they said, "Oh, it's not in America." Yet we admit, and if you go look at the book of tracks, they'll tell you that so many jaguar have been found in the mountains of Arizona in modern time, in the 2000s, that they're just waiting to find kittens to claim their breeding. They've been found in Texas. And we got the biggest deer herd in the world here in Lower Alabama. We didn't have armadillos when I was a boy. They migrated in the 80s. And why not the jaguar? So, mountain lion. Mountain lions or jaguars. Black panthers or cougars. You know, we got them down here. Garen, have you heard the stories of human disease? Yeah, I've heard about, well, as soon as the science community in the 1940s forbid any kind, that we had got the word that the Nazis were trying to cross humans and apes to make a super soldier, some sort of shock troop. Of course, it didn't work. And in the 1950s, you have a lot of references popping up about that. And so I've heard of the idea of crossing it. But really, the DNA doesn't work that way. They're too short. And all you'd be doing would be trying to splice in traits. Now, if you had Neanderthal or Denisovan DNA, you can make a hybrid with that pretty easily and get the same effect. We know that Neanderthal would probably double the strength of us. But it don't make sense to make a human Z. It really don't. You'd end up with a dumb creature, or you'd end up with a human with special needs because his body's deformed. It doesn't seem to work out when you really think about it. That's what the Planet of the Apes was talking about, because it came out of that era. Could we cross and make a, you'll end up with a dumb human, or you'll end up with something that's got all kinds of deformed body and can't work. Sounds good on paper. Ronald, right now we have a kangaroo that escaped the zoo 2 days ago. Oh boy, that's going to be fun to catch. They are not to be trifled with. They can punch and kick pretty bad. Yeah, the one only Nicole. Now only British villains have jaguars. I hear you. Dakota's in the house. Good evening, brother. Yeah, Gray. Well, that was the thing. They, a couple of years ago, they declared the eastern mountain lion extinct. Why would you do that? So you don't have to protect it. We know that mountain lions have moved back into the east. When I was a boy out of Florida, after the Corps of Engineers had destroyed the Everglades, where the Everglades don't have these great big tracts of dry land anymore. Before the Corps of Engineers, there were large tracts of forest in the Everglades. Now it's just one giant swamp. And they were doing it to prevent flooding, so they did it. Well, the deer herd that was there is gone, and none of the big cats can live without a pretty big food source. Bunnies ain't enough, and they prey upon that. Well, the reason I bring it up is back in the 70s, it just all the TV commercials you ever wanted to see talking about save the Florida Panther, save the Florida Panther. And they turned loose hundreds of transplanted panthers down there with tracking collars, and every one of them had left the state within 2 months. They would just get out of the swamp and head north and go into Georgia or Alabama. And eventually the tracking collar's battery would give up. If it didn't get hit by a car, that's where it went. And so we now have a lot of mountain lion in Alabama. They couldn't say that because they said the eastern was rare because of the Florida panther. Since they declared it extinct, it doesn't get any special protection like the western mountain lion, which are hunted. You can go on hunts for them, and ranchers can shoot them if they're taking out their cattle and all. Whereas if it was an eastern, you would have to protect it. So they just simply declared it extinct. It's not there. So why would they not declare if they knew there was a Bigfoot? You'd have to protect it. And if you just keep it as a myth and never admit it, same thing. Jaguar, as long as you don't say it's really there, Oh no, there's no such thing. Then how come 4 of them got killed on Alabama highways 2 years ago? That somebody's pet jaguar got hit by a car? Yeah. Yeah, preacher man, I have friends that are big herpetologists and love the big snakes and stuff like that. Andrew, what's a good small game load for a Remington 44 revolver? 4.51 round ball and somewhere around 20 grains of powder if it'll group well. Start at 20 and drift up a little bit until you find the best group. That won't tear up the small game like a full bore load will. And so it'd be lethal, it'll be accurate at say 15, 20 yards on bunnies and stuff like that. And yet won't be too costly to feed. So it's not wasteful for powder nor wasteful for too much horsepower. So I'd say start at like 20 and ease up. I think my 1860 likes 24 grains. It doesn't like 25 as much as it likes 24. So I go with 24 grains on it for a target light small game hunting load. There we go. John Loudermilk. New Bern, Alabama, 2012. That's right. Gorilla. You know, gorillas can live up to 60 years. That was just 10 years, a little over 10 years ago. He can still be running around the woods of Alabama. JB Calder, what's the most accurate 22 pistol you have ever shot? I had a Colt Woodsman target model that I got when I was 13 years old. I spent the summer working on a cattle ranch, the Wise Farm in northern Florida, and spent the summer playing cowboy. And I had a choice of my full wages or half my wages in that pistol, and I took half my wages in that pistol. And that was extremely accurate gun. It was like a laser. If you could hold the sights on it and squeeze the trigger, it hit. But that was my personal most accurate 22 pistol. That's the one I judge everything else against. Yeah, Gray Wolf, it don't make sense. You say it's not there, and then you prosecute somebody for shooting one. You're kind of admitting that it's there. The better thing to do would have been quiet about it, and instead of prosecuting for it, come up for something else to prosecute him for. Woo, Mark Burgess, yeah, 15-year-old Burmese. That's a feeding. Yeah. Small pigs. Gordon, Ruger single six, really good. Had one for 18, 20 years. Wish I still had it, but it was a very accurate, reliable 22. Tim Pierce, they won't, because then you got to protect it. If you just say, "Oh no, that's not real, that's Photoshop," they don't have to protect it. Nor do you want people to know that the reason they're little bitty yappy dog they let out at 1 o'clock in the morning to go pee and he never come back, that it was because a 150-pound mountain lion, took a snack out of him. You don't want to know such large predators like that are around. I have seen one in South Alabama. It's on a friend of mine's land. I was hanging in a hammock and had a camouflage thing on me, kind of like a blind, watching game. It was not quite hunting season yet, but I'm scouting is what I'm doing. And there's planted pines about 20 yards away from me going this way. And I watched this full mature mountain lion come trotting down through there. And the only reason that he didn't see me was I never moved. I was dead still. But he was a fully mature, about 150 pounds. And later, when I got up there and I could do my fist like that and put on his track, you could see the edges of his track. So his paw print is the size of my fist, like that. I figure he's about 150 pounds by the depth of the track, etc. So, yeah, he's living on my friend's land. We found where he made a scratch. Like a cat will go out and take a pee and then he'll scratch up. It's a cat. He'll do it too. But his is about the size of a, ottoman, And me and my friend, that's the first glimpse we got. There was one on that land. Me and him were walking it. And we got back near the pond and I'd spotted that. And it was a prominent place where one would be marking his territory. And you can see where it raked it up, where it reached out and pulled. Well, that was almost 6 foot across where he'd reached out and pulled, It means his body length's about 4 feet long or so. And I found in the middle where he'd left his deposit, and I took some sticks and dug it out and brought up the poop. And my friend is saying, "What are you doing?" I said, "You can tell a lot by looking at the poop. One, it's hair and black. That's a cat. Now, if it had seeds or something in it, it could be bear. If it were certain other things, it could be canine. This ain't canine. This is cat." And so by the fact that it's nothing but fur and black. Black is the blood, fur is that. This is a carnivore. He's nothing but a pure meat eater. And so there's not even little chips of bone in here. And so that told me right then. And we found a good track. And I told him it's a mountain lion. And then about, 4 or 5 months later, his mom was looking out the kitchen window and saw it come across the edge of the field and stopped. And she grabbed her phone and took a picture right quick. And it's blurry, but you could see where it was standing. And so the next time I was over, which is about 4 days later, she showed me the picture and I said, okay. And we took the camera and handed it to Micah, her son. And I said, okay. And we figured out where she was standing. I want you to take a picture of me at the same place that cat was standing. And there was one of those green phone boxes that you see on the side of county roads and stuff to mean that, this is where they'd come to do service for telephone lines in here. It's about that square and about 4 foot tall, sticking up on the side of the road. And he was beside it. And I went and stood next to it. So we got a rough idea how tall he was standing flat footed, and he's almost waist high on me. That's a fully mature cat. So I want to get a picture of him. Really, 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 really do. But he's big. The one and only Nicole. You look at a lot of poop, do you? Hey, go get the book, North American Track and Scat. It's just another form of sign. And once you figure out what you're looking at, it can be very informative to tell you what you're facing out here and what kind of animals are around here to hunt. So, well, guys, that's 1 hour and 48 minutes. I think we need to call it quits. I want to thank y'all for all the comments. I really do appreciate everything and really enjoyed it. It's been a long day. I got more chicken I got to work before I go to bed tonight. Well, actually more stuff in the freezer. I got to move around for chicken before I go to bed tonight. But guys, thank you very much. I'll be back on next Thursday night, and there'll be videos posting every couple of days till then. Till next time, guys, safe journeys. Y'all be safe and stay warm in this coming storm, okay?